Hey everyone, welcome back to the Brickhaven project. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at some changes that I've made here in the residential area, including removing the Simpsons house, eliminating some of those massive backyards, and overall just trying to improve the flow coming out of the city and into the residential area. So let's take a look. Alright, so if we start here at the back of the residential area, you can see the first major change that I'm currently working on, and that was moving the church from right next to the tracks as soon as you left the city, and actually curving the road straight to the left after this initial train crossing. And that actually allows for the church to actually sit directly on the roadway, so that way its front entrance is on the road, as well as allowing us to have the parking lot on the side of the building rather than all the way at the back of the building. Now, I think personally this just looks a lot better, and the aesthetic as you come out of the city of Brickhaven and into the countryside just seems to work a whole lot smoother, and the church has a lot more space around it for lots of landscaping detail that we will be sure to add in the near future. And then if we sort of pan all the way to the front here, you can see the pretty major change that I've made in the front of the residential area, and that was eliminating the Simpsons house and moving our two custom houses onto Main Street. So there's a few reasons that I decided to make this change. The first of which is that I was never a huge fan of the Simpsons house. I think it's a little out of scale for the houses that we have here in the residential area. And I also really did not like how much space was devoted to the backyards. If you remember, the houses were turned the other way, and there were these massive backyards right sitting in front of the train tracks here. And I just never found a good way to fill those up in a way that I thought made the most sense, but also I wanted to better utilize that space since I am working on a constrained table here. And so what I decided to do was actually remove the Simpsons house and flip the two custom houses onto Main Street. And this, I think, creates a much better view and a much better flow as you leave the main city. You just continue down Main Street and you see these two houses in this sort of older style. And I really like how this looks, especially still keeping with the river in the front, and then Main Street, and then the two houses following that. And they do still have backyard spaces. They are not finished. I still have a lot of landscaping that I need to do, and a lot of details that we need to put into this area. But they still have backyards. They're just a lot smaller than what they used to be. And I think overall we've created a much better look having the houses here in the front, and then giving the church a lot more space at the back of the layout. Now, one of the other adjustments I had to make when making these changes was actually moving the two main lines in by a whole base plate. That creates this gap that you see here. So we still have the industrial yard off to the very edge of the layout. This is unchanged as of right now, but we'll talk about my future plans for that in a little bit. But I did have to move the two main lines in one base plate just so that we could eliminate some of the space that is inside of this train loop. And that mainly allowed us to eat up some of that kind of wasted backyard space, and especially remove some of the space that was devoted to roads, because if you remember, there was actually a road that came off of Main Street and went all the way to the back. And by removing that road and shifting the houses more to the front, we have more of a center focus on our custom houses with the church in the back, rather than a focus on the backyard space and the roads and having the Simpsons house take up such a huge plot of land. I will note too that these changes right now are a work in progress, so I still have a lot of work when it comes to doing all the landscaping detail around the houses and the church, but another area that might be seeing some improvements is actually the transition space between the city and the residential area. So for the longest time, I've had this piece of track that runs from the front of the layout all the way to the back of the layout, and this acts as our reversing loop. However, one of the biggest problems about this reversing loop is I've had to resort to using the original LEGO City R40 curves, which are especially tight for my larger trains. And so what I'm thinking about doing is actually removing this reversing loop altogether, hence eliminating these two massive railroad crossings that have to exist. And I'm hoping to expand the river out a little bit towards the left side to eat up some of that space there. And that might create a smoother transition between the town and the residential area. So I do plan on making that change fairly soon. I'm not sure how well that's going to work out in the end, but it's definitely an idea that I'm playing with. And I would like to see the removal of the reversing loop only because, like I said, it's not very useful because it's on the R40 curves, but also it might actually be hindering the transition here between the town and the residential area. Flipping to the back of the layout here by the church, there is one detail that I have been working on extensively following this new renovation, and that has actually been this brand new train crossing design that I plan on implementing for all of my other train crossings. Now, I was always unhappy with my original train crossing design, mainly because of the amount of those ramp pieces that I had to use just to get you from the road plate height up to the level train crossing. But I've actually come up with a brand new design here that actually slopes the road plates. It sort of puts the road plate at an incline. You can see that with a bit of elevation in the mills plate surrounding that road, and that actually allows the road to go from regular mills plate height up to the level train crossing height at a very smooth transition and incline compared to what used to be a very rough transition with my old train crossing design. And so I'm extremely happy with how this detail came out. It also allowed me to keep those side edge lines all the way throughout the crossing. And I'm not fully finished with adding the detail. You can see I've started to work in some of the transition of those dark bluish gray plates on the sides, which is kind of like the spillover of the ballast. But I'm just incredibly happy with how this design turned out, and I do plan on incorporating this at all of the other train crossing locations. And if any of you guys would be interested in seeing a standalone video on how I was able to build this train crossing, just let me know down in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to make another video on this. The last area I want to discuss is our old industrial area. So this area, like I said earlier, is completely untouched, and I'm not entirely sure what my plans are for this area quite yet, but I do have some ideas. So my first idea is actually to continue this siding, but actually have it split out right here into two sidings and just have that run straight to the edge, rather than hitting this really tight R40 curve and going into the train yard back there. Because we also have another switch down there, which currently right now is just a really short siding, and I'm actually thinking about doing the same thing back there, where there'd be a siding that runs off the main line and splits off right where that black gap in the table is, and splits into two sidings that would also run straight to the back of the layout. And on that siding, we could still keep our blue warehouse, and on this front siding, we'd still be able to keep our dark orange warehouse. And so this would be really interesting because it would mean that the track doesn't actually run against the very edge of the table on the side. It would just run on the edge of the table here at the front and the back. And what this would allow us to do is to actually continue this road all the way to the back without having to have a train crossing. And we might actually be able to run it down to the blue warehouse and actually maybe have some more industrial buildings on this road. So I definitely have some ideas for this area that could really shake things up, but I'm happy that there's a lot more space for the industrial area now that we brought the main line in a whole base plate. So definitely let me know down in the comments what you think I should do with the industrial area. How should I set up the sidings? Because I still want to have some siding space for some rolling stock, but if I was able to actually get some more industrial buildings down on this end, that would be pretty exciting too. So I don't have a current finalized plan right now, so stay tuned. We still have a lot of work to do on the residential rebuild, whether that be redoing all of the landscaping details, possibly removing my reversing loop and making the river bigger, as well as completely revamping the industrial area to create some brand new scenes with lots of very exciting detail. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this little update on my residential rebuild project. I know it wasn't that long ago that I unveiled the residential area, but something just wasn't sitting with me very well, and I wanted to give this area another shot, and I'm really happy with how the rebuild is coming along. But we still have a lot more exciting plans over here and a lot more details to include, so definitely stay tuned. But with that, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to subscribe, leave a like, and comment down below what you think of the rebuild so far, and if you have any ideas for not only the residential area, but also the brand new and improved industrial area that will be coming very soon. So, very exciting times down here. But thank you again for watching today's video, and we will see you next time on the Brickhaven project.